Hello, welcome to the stream. India's government now has direct control over Kashmir, but what does the end of the territory's semi-autonomy mean for people living there? I'm Femi Okay.
I'm Malika Bilal. Send us your thoughts on what's happening in Kashmir through Twitter and YouTube.
It is now 3 months since India's government sent thousands of extra troops to Jammu and Kashmir and ended 7 decades of special status there. Now the region has been divided and brought under federal control.
The government says the new union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh have a bright future. But many civilians in the Muslim-majority region are still living under lockdown, with their movements tightly policed and the internet and some cell phone services cut off. Hundreds of Kashmiri politicians and activists have been arrested, with many still in detention. Over the last few weeks, there's also been sporadic violence. On Tuesday, one person was killed and dozens hurt in a grenade attack in the regional center of Srinagar.
For more on this, we are joined from London by Natasha Cole. She is Associate Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Westminster.
Shazia Ilmi is a spokesperson for India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP. She is in New Delhi.
And Ajay Shukla is a writer at Business Standard and Indian English Language Daily. He joins us from Kannur in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you here. I want to start with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the very day that Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh became officially part of the federal part of India and administered from New Delhi. He was both buoyant and then also quite fierce about what this meant for India. Have a listen.
New highways, new railway lines, new schools, new colleges, new hospitals will all take the people of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh to new heights of development. We will defeat every attack on the unity of our nation. We will give it a jaw-breaking response. Any attempt to break the country's unity will never be able to withstand big democratic values and strong public sentiment.
Shadi, we edited bits of that speech, but it felt a little bit like the carrot and the stick felt pretty stiff there. I'm just wondering, from the BJP perspective, is this the good move? Is this now you've solved this issue about what's happening in Kashmir, what's happening in Jammu, and now you've solved it? It's been going on since 1947. Sure. Are we done now? Mission accomplished.
So thank you so much for having me over. I think this is a great move, and there was need to do away with this anachronistic and an article such as 370, which actually says it gives special status to people of Kashmir, but actually takes away the basic rights which are actually guaranteed under the Indian Constitution. So this was meant to be a temporary transitional provision. And it so says, as it is written down, that it can be done away with by a president's ordinance. And this has been part of the BJP, the ruling party's manifesto. So it is really not a surprise to people who belong to BJP, who know what the ruling party stands for. That's one. And two, and most importantly, Article 370 became like a festering, bone of contention, like a saw, so to speak, to keep the people of Jammu and Kashmir alienated from the rest of India. So I think instead of calling Kashmir as in being a state of peril, just as your title suggests, I think it's pretty much the other way around. I think Kashmir is finally out of peril. Finally, it will not be used by the separatists and the stooges who dance to the tune of Pakistan and the military establishment, which we all know houses the modules of Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, and who have been indulging for years and years this counter-insurgency and cross-border infiltration and terrorism, because of which 42,000 Indian civilians and Kashmiri citizens, including many Muslims, have been killed in the state of Kashmir in the last 3 decades. Not just that, the Kashmiri Pandits, which is another a minority in Kashmir, has been cleansed, and the 15,000 Kashmiri Pandits who had to be thrown out of the valley.
So Shazia,
I think
let me just pause.
370 will do
Let me just pause
a
you.
historical wrong right.
Let me just
and,
pause you for a
will
moment.
pave
Shazia,
progress.
Shazia, allow me to have a conversation with you. Let me just pause you for a moment. Article 370 is the part of the Indian constitution which gave special status to Kashmir.
That's right.
Can I say something?
Okay, yeah, it did. So when it says
so I'm going to pause you for.
I'm
going to pause. Shazia, it's a conversation. Just hold tight for a moment. I know everybody has so much to say. Natasha, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So let me begin by saying that I'm not disappointed at all to hear a BJP spokesperson introduce the discussion with reference to Pakistan, which did come up, but with no mention of Kashmiris except for Kashmiri Pandits. This is fairly typical of the script. Yes, the article was a temporary provision, but it was placed there for a reason.
I don't think you were listening, ma'am.
The article was placed there for a reason, and that is because Kashmir is a political dispute, something that the current government especially refuses to recognize. And if all of this is being done for the benefit of Kashmiris, which is factually challengeable at every possible turn, then why aren't the Kashmiris allowed to say anything about it, which is a pretty basic question. Why do the Kashmiris need to be silenced for something that is supposedly being done for their benefit? Why can't they be allowed to speak about it? As for the fact that this somehow brings any benefits to them, this is just complete, I'm sorry to say, but this is just complete rubbish. They have been suffering for 3 months now.
Natasha, that is a point that so many people in our community have raised, that Kashmiri voices were not included in this. They're not at the table. I want to share this tweet from Najm, who says, "It would have been a badge of honor for India and Indians if the people of Kashmir would have been asked. For today, it's nothing but formal occupation by a powerful nation of a marginalized Muslim state." So it's that idea of being asked that is at issue with many people, including one who sent us a video comment. I want you all to have a listen to Binish Ahmed. She's a PhD candidate at Ryerson University in Canada, and she's written about this topic. Here's what she told to Stream.
Kashmiris are a sovereign indigenous people whose rights are enshrined within the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, to which India, China, Pakistan are all signatories. Kashmiris have given no consent to the unilateral changes that were made pertaining them by India, and what this means is that Kashmiris will continue to refuse colonial domination and subordination. India is holding on to Kashmir through exclusive use of militarized force and repression. And in the international system, in order for there to be a peaceful resolution to this conflict, what the international state actors have to do is demand that there be a self-determination vote and demilitarization of the world's most militarized place in the world.
So Ajay, I'll give that one to you because Natasha has already mentioned that point, but you've been covering this issue. Is this one of the main concerns you're hearing from Kashmiris who say this has not involved us, but it is about us?
Yes, that is true. It has to be borne in mind at every stage when dealing with Kashmir that Article 370 was a constitutional guarantee that was provided by the government of India to Kashmir and Kashmiris as a condition for joining or acceding to India. It was a constitutional promise that was given to the Kashmiri people. And if we withdraw from that promise, to be fair, it has to be said that that promise has been diluted by successive governments between 47 and today. But if India were to withdraw from that promise, it could only be with the consent or at least the consultation of the Kashmiri people. Now, the problem with this entire move is not that Article 370 was revoked, because Article 370 had been reduced to an empty shell in any case. The problem was that it was effectively scuttled without even the face saver of consultation. It was, in the opinion of every Kashmiri that I have spoken to, a humiliation to Kashmiris and Kashmir, and it was sort of a signal they feel by the New Delhi government that they could rub the Kashmiri noses in the mud whenever they wanted. But the problem is that, when Prime Minister Modi promises development and, a new life and a new future to the Kashmiri people, the question that has to be asked was, How was Article 370 coming in the way of this development in any case? It wasn't. Article 370 was not blocking any development or any favors that were to be given to the Kashmiris. So this is an argument that doesn't stand scrutiny. And the fact is that whichever way you slice it, the Kashmiris and the Kashmir people should have been consulted.
Natasha, can you tell us a little bit more about what is happening to Kashmiris right now? I know that schools have been out for some time. Some people are saying, hey, we're not even going to open the shops. This is our civil disobedience because we do not like what is happening to us. Can you take us through little elements of daily life so we understand what it is like now that Kashmir is going to be administered from New Delhi?
Well, let me tell you that it's not just Kashmiris or Kashmiris not there who are saying this. This is well documented by every single fact-finding team, that independent fact-finding team of Indians who has gone there. And there have been 4 main reports produced by Indian women and men who have gone there. And all of the reports have highlighted the same thing: the extreme miseries that are faced by the people, because you can open the schools, but the children's life is not secure. So the classrooms are empty. They have documented shortages of medicines. Doctors who've spoken up have been whisked away on camera. There is Kashmiris are placed in this utterly humiliated situation where if they speak up, then it would be seen as a sign of, if they continue to live their lives, then that is interpreted as some kind of a consent. And if they don't, then what are they to do except perish? And some of those reports highlight the saddest things, with one of them reporting that in Bandipura, in a village, there was this small girl who was preparing for her board exam. She left the light on. The army came in and took her father and brother away. There are numerous such instances documented by all of the reports. And all of the leaders have been detained or put under house arrest. I mean, on this show earlier this year, I was with a Kashmiri who had served, who had topped the Indian civil services and then quit to join politics. He, after speaking to Hard Talk, was detained. I mean, whichever way you look at it, whether somebody's a pro-Indian Kashmiri or, a pro-Pakistani Kashmiri or a Kashmiri nationalist Kashmiri, all of them have been made irrelevant and treated so badly.
So on that point, I want to bring in a couple of comments from online, but I do want to note that the connection to Shazia Ilmi has dropped. So we're trying to get her back and reconnect with her to bring her back into this conversation. But I want to go here, picking up off of what you were saying, Natasha. Dr. Junaid on Twitter is actually replying to a tweet that you sent just a little while ago. He writes, "There is heavy snowfall amidst total blackout. No electricity, nothing. Living helpless with constant fear, no contact from outside world while the UN sleeps. Do they have enough food, water, medicine, fire to keep themselves warm?" All questions that he doesn't have answers to. But someone replied to him right away. Bharat Patel says, "What a cold-blooded liar you are. Kashmir is as peaceful as never before, has ample electricity and all other basic facilities. People are free to move around and enjoy their lives. Tourists have started to arrive, all is well, and the region is truly integrated with India now." Unfortunately, two varying accounts, but I want to give people the reason for it, and it's because of severe restrictions on getting information into or out of Kashmir. That comes to us via a video comment from Hafsa Kanchwal. She's a assistant professor of South Asian history here in the U.S., and here's what she says.
So India has not allowed any international observers into Kashmir, with the exception of far-right, xenophobic, Islamophobic parliamentarians from Europe. Aside from that, international observers from human rights organizations or elected officials from the U.S. or other countries have not been able to give access, have not been given access to Kashmir, which really begs the question, what is India trying to hide? If Kashmiris are indeed happy with these recent developments, then why can't the world community see that for themselves? Why is there a communication clampdown and a complete lack of access to the region?
Shazia Ilmi is joining us now via the phone. Shazia, I want to give that comment to you. People are saying that there's a lockdown and information's not able to get out. What is India trying to hide? That's the comment Hafsa had. What would you respond?
No, you have unfortunately collected the opinions of those who stand for the separatists and their stooges, because there have been a lot of international reports every day on Indian television. There are plethora of channels who have the reporters visiting Kashmir, yes, there was an internet lockdown, and there were political detentions, and which were necessary, and there were preventive measures to ensure law and order. In fact, the deaths that you mentioned and the casualties were done by the terrorists against whom the administration and these so-called armed forces is acting is to ensure peace there. So there have been 5 Kashmiri laborers, not Kashmiri, migrant laborers killed in Kashmir, gunned down in violence by the terrorists who come from other parts of the country. And I would like this lady not to butt in, and also would like to interject, and probably she could not hear me, but I talked about the Muslims who have been killed. When I talked about 15,000 Kashmiri Pandits, before that I talked about the Kashmiri Muslims who have been killed by these terrorists. And you know, the other day, even the schools have been, they've had people throwing grenades at the school. Ghulam Mir, who was just killed only because he opened his shot, was killed by the bullets of the terrorists and not of the security personnel. So I think there is some misreporting, and I think it's deliberate. And I think the dominant narrative that is being bandied around shows the perpetrators of violence as the victims of violence. Because Kashmir is just not about Kashmiri Muslims. Yes, Kashmiri Muslims who suffer. Captain Ayub Pandit was a Muslim, right? And he died. The laborers who were there, they were all Muslims. Ghulam Mir was a Muslim. So let me assure Natasha that it is just not the Sikhs and Hindus that I'm talking about. But I also
I'm glad
talk
you
for the
realized that I have a name.
Ladakh.
Can I say
so
something
let me finish
So
before I get to talk.
Shazia, you can pay.
I'm not done. I want to just finish, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I understand, Shazia, but we only have a limited amount of time. Just give me
30 seconds.
Okay.
You have everybody speaking on the other side, right? You have Ajay Shukla and Natasha and all the voices.
Shazia, finish your point because you're using your time to complain about the time.
Can my point of view, which is actually least represented here, can you give me time to finish? So the Buddhists in Ladakh are actually celebrating. The Hindu, the Dogra communities are celebrating. The women, the Kashmiri Muslim women who would have lost their rights and of inheritance because of the PR, which is permanent resident status, are actually happy because they can marry anybody outside the state.
So Shazia, I hear you, and you represented a very important perspective here, because obviously this is a BJP move. I hear you. It still has to be a conversation. Natasha, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say that the level of discourse that has just been illustrated is not a surprise. They convert everything that is a political question into an existential question, and then other the person who doesn't agree with them and start ad hominem sort of arguments. The fact is that India at the moment in relation to Kashmir is acting as an empire masquerading as a democracy. It is colonial because there is no consent being sought of the Kashmiris, no dissent allowed to be expressed. The Kashmiris are being humiliated. Their moves are arbitrary and unaccountable.
True.
It would be the first time. It would be the first time that.
And words.
Shazia, I need to be able to hear Natasha so that I can hear what you want to say back to her, but I can't do that if you talk over her.
I think she's just repeating herself with no real point to make.
Natasha, Shazia, I feel that is for me to decide. Hold tight for a moment. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Kashmiris are being suffocated, silenced, and subjugated, and it is apparent to the whole world. The only way this discourse can be perpetuated in India is by not allowing the mainstream Indian media to cover this. This is not being done for the benefit of Kashmiris. They haven't got the internet. They haven't got the knowledge.
All right, Natasha, I hear you. We want to push ahead because there are other people who are online who also want to be part of this conversation. Malika.
Ajay, I actually want to bring you back into the conversation via this video comment on what this actually means for the future of the region. So we got a comment from Tanvir Ahmed. He's an independent researcher, and he's coming to us from Azad Kashmir, or Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Here's what he told the stream.
Ending of Kashmir's special status has also broken the enduring Indo-Pak bilateral conflict management module enduring since 1947. This has perversely opened up space for the various multiple narratives within J&K to surface. And we here in AJK are trying our best to develop this internal political process so that we can measure and clarify the sovereign status of J&K, something which the Indians and Pakistanis had failed to do.
So Ajay, what does this mean for the future and those who are seeking aspirations of an independent state?
Okay, so there are...
That's actually a question for Ajay. Ajay, we haven't heard his voice in a minute. Ajay, do you want to take that on?
Yes. It's important to note that there is great complexity amongst the people of Kashmir. There are diverse opinions over there. Kashmir is a state that has representation from not just the Muslims who are in the majority in Kashmir region itself, but there's also Hindu-dominated Jammu. There is also Buddhist-dominated Ladakh. And each of these regions are seeing this entire situation develop in a different way. For the Kashmiri Muslims, of course, it's just plain humiliation. Regardless of what Shazia Ilmi is saying, this vision of a Potemkin vision of a Kashmir and this happy population dancing at liberation ostensibly is complete fiction. But even in Jammu, there is a large Muslim minority over there. The people of Jammu themselves are concerned at the statehood being taken away and they're being reduced to a union territory. This is a downgrading of status for them. So there's a little bit of a worry. Also, with the special status of the state being taken away, it is now open to settlement from mainstream India, from people from other states, and people from Jammu are worried that outsiders can come in, buy property, settle down, corner business, and so on.
Ajay, you make a really good point, because one of our reporters who has been reporting this week, Anshal Vora, she went into the Kashmir region to talk about the land and also talk about business and how business may well be impacted because of this ongoing conflict and tension between India and Kashmir. And this is what she came up with. Have a listen to this, gentlemen.
Gulmarg is a favorite spot for Indians traveling to escape high temperatures. Its hotels are usually overbooked during the festival season, but this year there were hardly any tourists. Bilal is a tour guide, but is now spending his days playing cricket. He's worried that even the winter, when skiers from around the world usually arrive, things will be the same. But his biggest fear is that wealthy Indian investors will come to Kashmir and buy up the land.
The Indian government doesn't want anyone to come here. They want the people of Kashmir to suffer so much that the last thing they have, their land, they sell their land to feed their families.
Ajay, we've been debating politics back and forth here, but what about the business angle and just people being able to have a livelihood in Kashmir? What do you make of that? Is there going to be an ongoing impact? Because people may not even want to go to the region.
Yes, Kashmir is sort of dependent on outside help in many ways. A lot of fruit, and Kashmir is an absolute cornucopia of fruit. Apples, peaches, pears, apricots, all of them go out to India. Its economy is dependent partly on that. There's also this fear of, wild trading with India and other outside states. There's the fear of their identity being overwhelmed. This is not just a Kashmiri problem. Other border areas in India, such as Arunachal Pradesh and the northeast of the country, are also granted these special protections, which have been withdrawn from Kashmiris now. So there's this whole sort of combination of economic interests, identity issues, all of this has just been completely scuppered by this measure that has been taken. And what will come to the fore if you go into any depth in all of this is that this is not being done, in my opinion, as an independent journalist, to provide benefits to the Kashmiris. It has been done to send a signal to the Muslims of the rest of India
I appreciate
that
your
we
perspective,
are dealing with this with a
because
firm
we're right
hand.
at the end of the show, and Shazia and Natasha appreciate your perspectives as well. It's very clear that this conversation is ongoing, and we will keep following it here on the stream. Malika.
I will end with Muzamil, who says this change has not benefited the residents of the region, and whenever the country goes against the will of the people, change isn't positive.
That is all for today. Thank you, guests. But please keep your comments coming through Twitter, YouTube, and aljazeera.com/the stream. Bye for now.